crypto markets are seeing something extremely interesting that they have not seen since the all-time high. Now, this is despite the fear, the doom, and the gloom that is set out there on the world stage with the possibility of a recession in 2023. So what is this data that we are looking at today? We're looking at the search terms with how to buy Bitcoin. How to buy Bitcoin is on the increase. And of course, we need to follow this up with how to buy crypto as well. So we're seeing some extreme cases right now at these lower prices on Bitcoin. We want to see what this means moving forward and how we can best navigate this into 2023. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell notification icon, and of course, like up the content. If you want to wait to see what the value is, you know the deal. I'll remind you again throughout the video. So for today's video, we're looking at the search terms here, how to buy Bitcoin, what this is related to in the markets today and in the past. And another interesting fact about how to buy Bitcoin are the lows that are coming into the market. Each cycle, we have seen higher lows for the search term, how to buy Bitcoin. That's a good thing because more and more people are becoming more interested in Bitcoin at these lower prices. Now, it's coming from many Western developed nations, which is what we want to see. That is essentially where a lot of the money is. Australia, United States, United Kingdom, of course, New Zealand, Canada, UAE, and Singapore here. But at the moment, the top search volume is, of course, Nigeria for how to buy Bitcoin. Now, this can be explained because the currency of Nigeria is getting absolutely destroyed. It is on the decline. Plus, the Nigerian government is set to pass bills recognizing Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Of course, this is an article from December as well. So there is a lot of talk about Bitcoin, whether they're accepting it or they take it away in the future or they do bring it in the future. Either way, there is a lot of talk around this in Nigeria. It's a similar sort of thing that happened with El Salvador back in 2021 with the bull market. So is it going to last? Of course, no one knows. No one knows if that's going to last. But what it has done is spur on this particular search term, which then means more and more people start to search for it, wondering why is this going on? And potentially videos like this are also going to help that search term. But of course, I'm talking about this now in January. This has been on the rise since September. And we're looking at the lows here of 8, 7, and 8 on the reading here. This is on Google. This is comparing this particular search period. This search period is from 2016 to 2023, 7 years. The peak was December 2017, how to buy Bitcoin. Every single time it happens at tops. How to buy crypto or Bitcoin is generally one of those major tops. So don't be one of those fools. If you've stuck around through the bear market and now at the beginning of 2023, this is possibly that time where we go through that boring grind sideways period. And if you leave now, you'll miss these moves until it's too late and everyone is searching for it at those peaks. So that's what we saw in previous cycles. So the really important thing here is that we are on the move up. We look at how to buy Bitcoin worldwide past 5 years. You can see this trend is increasing the end of last week at number 39. So the reading here is at 39. The previous peaks in the market were at around these prices here, October of 2021 and November, the first couple of weeks of November. That was the peak of the Bitcoin market, well and truly way back up here. So those readings were at about 30 down to about 26. We're currently passing those levels right now. And if we take the Nigeria thing out of the equation, going back to around October, where there's still some interest from Nigeria, of course, you're still at those same levels here at about 26, which is where it was back at those all-time highs. Now, this is increasing, which is a good sign. Doesn't mean that it's going to keep increasing. Of course not. Here's your up, down, sideways answer. But what you do want to see in a macro sense is lows getting higher. So this is potentially that low period. We've talked about this many times on the channel. So of course, if you aren't subscribed, why not? And the thing that we look at a lot is the cycle buy zones here. And the cycle buy zones between that $11,500 and around $19,500, just looking historically back at previous cycle bottoms. So there's a lot of information here that we can use to better prepare for the potential bull market ahead. I happen to think there is one. Of course, I'm just some guy on the internet as well, but these areas have been very, very good zones to accumulate Bitcoin, regardless of if Bitcoin drops to 12,000 or 14,000, or God forbid, it goes under $10,000, which I've claimed many, many times. You can almost kiss your $10,000 goodbye. Underneath $10,000, I don't think is going to happen. I don't think it's going to consolidate under there. And if it was to consolidate under $10,000, that is extremely weak for Bitcoin. You don't want to see that for a long-term investment because that means it'll just go back into this accumulation space. Enough on that. I've talked about that in previous videos as to why that is a bad zone for Bitcoin to go in. A wick or a spike on a weekly is fine, and we close back above some of these previous resistance levels. That is a good thing. So should we even go to $12,000 or $14,000, the percentage move from here is barely noticeable. To those previous tops, about 16%. That is not much in cryptocurrency. If you guys have been around, you know that is not much at all. So the risk to reward factor at the moment is well and truly in favor of those that are taking risks and buying some Bitcoin at these lower prices in this particular zone. Of course, if you are trading and you're trading the longer swings, you're calling yourself an investor, but essentially looking to sell out at some point, you're a trader, you want to have some stops in play. I think underneath these particular levels is not a good area for Bitcoin to go in the long term in order for it to get back to some much, much higher prices. So have some stops in play if you are worried about your holdings. So in terms of this particular search term, this is looking really, really good. Going back to the lows that have happened in the market, these good areas of support and accumulation, this area was January, February, March of 2019. So January, February, and March of 2019, these levels were around 5 and 4 on this reading for how to buy Bitcoin. We've seen the current lows at about 7 and 8. So we're getting higher lows, and those particular levels were at the highs of that mini bull run within the major bull run. Talking about this particular bull run here. So in April, May, and June of 2019, when the market pumped, the search terms for how to buy Bitcoin, we go back over here, we've got March, April, May, and June. That was at about 11. And you can see these lows here at about 13 and 14. This is on the shorter term time frame of 5 years, and we go back to the 7-year chart here. You can see that these lows were around, or the peaks were around 7, and we saw the lows at around 7. So those lows are getting higher and starting to form on previous high levels. That is a good thing overall. Go back one more cycle. You can see in 2016, the market was at 1 or 2 on this search term. And of course, these lows came in at around 4 and 5, anywhere up to 4 and 5 throughout that entire period. So there's more search volume coming into Bitcoin for how to buy Bitcoin, not just Bitcoin news or people interested to see what happens, but people actually interested in searching the term how to buy Bitcoin. What they're not searching, however, is how to buy crypto. This is a very important differentiation here, because if you're looking to buy altcoins, the interest is just not there at this point in time. And that is also evident in the Bitcoin dominance chart here. So this is our TIA Bitcoin dominance. If you want to understand more about our tools, go down to the top of the video description. We have our free economic report coming out today. Go and subscribe to that. That'll be sent out to your email in the next 24 hours. And then our TIA Gann swing indicator as well. This one here is being developed. We're almost there. So make sure you are subscribed so you know when this indicator comes out. This one is just looking at the dominance of Bitcoin minus the stable coins, so that we can get an idea of whether people are favoring Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. Essentially, our philosophy is to be in with the trend when we're investing or trading in cryptocurrencies. And right now, the trend is with Bitcoin. You can see this is increasing. This is the dominance, which means more money is coming into Bitcoin than it is into cryptocurrencies. And we're also seeing that with search terms here. So the volume is dropping off on people searching how to buy cryptos. It peaked, strong peak, the biggest peak in its history back in May of 2021. That was just at the peak of the altcoin boom. So for trading in altcoins, which is essentially what 99.99% of people are doing because they're looking to sell out at some point, they're not long-term investors, you want to be waiting to see the peaks in the Bitcoin dominance and then a nice big dump in the dominance, which just means people are selling BTC or piling more money into altcoins to get those altcoin gains, right? So the areas that I'm looking out for in this dominance chart are the halfway point of the current highs and the halfway between the highs and the lows. So the lows are sitting at around 42%, the highs at around 72%, which means halfway, approximately 57%. So just looking here on this scale, 57% comes in very close to the previous peak. So we're going to be watching the dominance if it continues to rise to about this level to then get a rejection, which then could mean we get a bit of an altcoin pump, bit of an altcoin season, like we've seen in the past. Bitcoin is still in its macro uptrend and dominance, but we could still see some good drop-offs in the dominance, which could lead into some great gains for altcoins like we saw throughout 2020. You can see where the dominance dropped off here. That was basically the DeFi run. Another extremely interesting metric to follow is the fear and greed, basically the market sentiment. Where do we think people are at in terms of their feelings about the market? What we're currently seeing is a reading in the mid-20s. We know that the extreme of this reading is around 15 and under. So that's somewhere throughout this period here. Anytime we see around 15 or under, we see some extreme fear. Of course, this can happen slightly higher, like in the case of FTX collapse, which is this small little drop in market sentiment compared to the other drops. But overall, underneath this 15 level is generally where the market gets extremely bearish. And from this point, the interesting thing that we're seeing here is higher lows. So the market sentiment is getting less fearful about cryptocurrencies, even though the prices are down lower than what they were at these particular levels right now. So we're seeing a divergence in price of Bitcoin and cryptos and what people are feeling about the market, basically the market sentiment, what they're seeing out there. So we're seeing the high lows, which is a good thing for a bullish move for market sentiment, which could then lead into a bit of a run on potentially Bitcoin at this point in time, cryptos to follow. What we're waiting for is a breakthrough somewhere around this 40 level here. You can see it's been pretty good support over the past, and then resistance with only a few times where it's able to break out. In this case, it was resistance just before the FTX collapse. Another thing to note is these levels, when it drops, this was extreme fear from the peak in April on Bitcoin. So we're just looking at this Bitcoin top that formed here, and then we had that big dump. This was the start of the UST and the Luna debacle before we got the tiny little dump on FTX, which is really quite strange because it almost was like this was more fearful for the market than this. You know, maybe more people were affected in this FTX collapse. However, more money was lost in the market through this particular period, through April top into that June bottom. And we see that on the market sentiment as well. You can see this period of market sentiment going from around 60 down to 10. And then for the FTX, it was only around 40 down to 20. So the market sentiment is starting to potentially flip. And I would say that the flip would happen should we break through this 40 reading. We need to get back into the neutral zone and remain at that zone so we can then start to climb like we've done in the past, leading into a potential bear market rally, which could then flip into the first bull market run. And we have a few other metrics that we're using to determine that bull market run, in particular, these particular swing tops here. So our 2-week swing top and our monthly swing top. They're pretty good confirmers or indicators of the market flipping like we've seen in the past. These were all lower tops until the market flipped in April and gave us a nice big bull run. A couple of minor false breaks, but of course, those lows were taken out again and the trend continued down. So keep a lookout for that, your TI Again Swing Indicator. As I mentioned, if you want to learn more about that, go and check out the tool here. It's in the second link, TI Again Swing Indicator. It's really helpful to get an idea of the market trend and if we're going to flip into the macro bull or remain in that bearish state, which then takes us to the Wall Street cheat sheet. With a lot of people believing we're still somewhere in this denial stage for a further capitulation, potentially under $10,000, time is starting to run out for that in regards to how the market is actually feeling. This is the data from the Fear and Greed Index. By all means, we could still drop to 10. But at the moment, this little bit of a reading from June, so 7 months now, is showing higher lows. It's not my opinion. We're just reading what the chart is showing right here. So if that's the case, maybe we're more likely in this anger into depression zone, which can take many, many months at these lower prices. You have heard me talk about this being a good area for a low, and I've talked about that since June. When you look at the price, 17.5 to where we currently are at about 16.6 or 16.7, it's only a matter of several $100s per Bitcoin. So although the feeling is potentially so much worse. The price is very, very similar. Don't ever let that fool you. Always come back to a price chart before getting too hyped up with X, Y, Z has to happen because there's recession this year or the money printers are off or any other sort of big news idea. Come back to the charts and look at what people are actually doing and actually, in this case, what they're actually feeling and then how they act on that in the markets. So with that in mind, we could be around this area, which may take several months like we've seen in the past for BTC, going back to previous cycles at these lows for around 4 to 5 months. Nice little pump up, again, several months before the first move and the capitulation of COVID, and then the reaccumulation before the bull market starts. It can take quite some time to get out of these depressing feelings. But we'll see that as the market begins to break above some of these higher grounds. So that's a look at where we could be on the Wall Street cheat sheet here, looking at where investors may be. And of course, if this is all the case with all of these lows indicators lining up, then of course, the risk to reward is looking much more favorable at these particular areas. Now, the last thing I want to leave you with, and we'll get into this one in a little more detail in future videos, is what happens if we break out of these lows. And it goes back to the investor mindset or the trader psychology here. It never seems like a good time to buy. Of course, we can do this all the way down. It could be lower. It could go past 10K. I'm going to wait. Oh, I bought at 16. It went to 14. I was an idiot. Or you're an idiot because you told me. Those sort of things, right? You don't ever want to blame someone else. It is your decision to buy or to sell or to do nothing. But in terms of the market moving up, if in fact we've got to prepare for both sides, we start to get some FOMO. If this market does move up, maybe get a bit of a base first and we start to find our way higher throughout this month, these sort of feelings could come into play. The market's too high now. Maybe we drop to 14 and then bounce back up to 18. People say, well, it was at 14. I'm going to wait for it to go back to 14. Then you get a higher low form, and that might only be at $17,000 here. So maybe it comes into around this level here, 17 or 16K. People are still waiting. And then what happens from that point? It pushes up higher. Market is too high. So they're waiting for the pullback, and then the market's too high again. The pullback doesn't come to what they're expecting. Then you get a drop, waiting until things settle down, and then so on and so forth. As I said, we'll get into this in future videos as well, because it's really important to understand how investors are thinking. This has gone on forever. This is the way it is every time we come out of these lows. I definitely remember it through the lows of 2019. I had that bottom into November and December of 2018, and then the market ran up to 5,000. So it happened exactly as that chart had predicted. The market is going lower. So we're saying it's too high at $5,000 because it was recently at 3,600 and 3,900. We never got that pullback in 2019. And then the market just continued to run on to that next move without putting in anywhere of a pullback. Ran all the way to 8,700, tiny pullback to 7.4, but because you were so used to it just a few weeks ago being at 5, people were waiting. And then all of a sudden it runs into $13,000 or $14,000. That's when everyone starts to jump in. And before you know it, basically collapses over the next 6 months into lows of around $6,000 to $7,000, and you lose 50% very, very easily. We'll focus on this because I think this is the sort of thing, not exactly, but the sort of thing that's coming up in 2023. The market is due for it after being suppressed for so long. So stay tuned to the channel, like and subscribe. Check out the videos that are popping up on your left-hand side here to learn more about my 2023 future predictions for the economy, stock markets, real estate, and of course, Bitcoin. And don't forget, our free newsletter is coming out today. Links in the top of the video description. I'll see you guys at the next video. Until then, take care. Peace out.